Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of My Bigfoot Sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of run-down no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
My Bigfoot sighting happened in Tennessee on the Cumberland Plateau in November of 2020. My husband and I was going in the mountains. We were going to a place called Gobey near Wartburg in Tennessee. And he was taking me up on top of the mountain. I went up there quite a bit whenever I was a young child with my parents. And I wanted to just go up there and look around and be nostalgic and just have a good time on the mountain. We get up there and, you know, I had been dabbling. I hadn't really thought about Bigfoot, hadn't really paid attention to, you know, much Bigfoot stuff. I'd heard about it, have a couple of friends that had believed in Bigfoot. And we were on our way back down from the mountain and we were going very, very slow. It was an old logging road and they were currently doing logging up there. As we were coming around the mountain, coming down the bend, I started joking around and saying, hey, you know, I'm going to holler out for a Bigfoot. So I started doing a whooping sound. I went, whoop, whoop. I mean, it was hot. We had the windows down. And all of a sudden, I heard a Bigfoot whoop come back. And I thought, oh, how funny. Somebody's up here and they're whooping back. Somebody's messing with me. So we were coming on down the mountain and it was pretty warm for November. It was like the first part of November. We were still, you know, coming around the bend and I did it again. So it whooped back again. And then I was thinking, well, who would be all the way up here on the mountain that would know what that is? Or why would they be messing with me? So as we're coming around the bend and we're going really slow, I look over and I see this thing standing behind the tree and it was huge. I was dumbfounded. I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything but look at it. And I had a phone right in my lap and everything, and I just couldn't move. And I looked at it and I saw its eyes. I mean, it looked straight at me. It was standing behind the tree and it had its right arm around the tree with its hand like in front of the tree and had its other arm behind it. It was kind of moving slow, like tilting around the tree, like it was trying to hide behind the tree, but wanted me to see it. It was black as soot, except for around its hands, around its wrists and stuff. You could see a little bit of, like the tips of its fur was like a dark reddish color. I could see fur all over its body, all over its face, and its eyes were as black as soot. I mean, they were very jet black, but you could see the shine in it. And you could tell that it had its eyes open. You could see the definition of its eyes and the skin around its eyes and part of its nose, but it was so furry that you couldn't really see that much dimension around its cheekbones and stuff because it was covered in fur. And I just kept looking at it and I kept thinking, oh my God, is that really what I'm seeing? Am I losing my mind? Is it really what I'm seeing? I couldn't even speak to my husband. I just kept saying, is that what I'm seeing? Is that what I'm seeing? And as we kept going around the bend, it kept moving behind the tree like it was trying to hide, but there was no way it could have hidden behind that tree because the tree wasn't covering a quarter of it. And it just kept turning behind that tree. Well, my husband was saying, what is it? What is it? And I said, look. And by the time I come to my senses to get him to see. He looked over and it was gone. It was just like it just vanished. I kept questioning myself, is that really what I saw? Did I really see that? Well, from that point on, I questioned myself. My husband and I, we hike every Sunday, and we have for about 3 years now. We decided we were going to go hiking around a place we go camping. We used to go camping a lot down at Rock Creek in Wartburg in Tennessee. We were going up the mountain, and it's Cumberland Trail, and it leads up to Alley Ford. And it was wintertime. And we were coming up the top of the mountain. We were going over the ridge. I started looking up stuff about Bigfoot, about what to look for and stuff. And so we had saw these pretty large sticks that were broken off and made into like a structure on the side of the trail. Well, we stopped there and we were looking at the structure, and my husband said, "Have you been standing there?" And I looked over and I said, "What do you mean, have I been standing there?" And he said, "Look at that big footprint next to your foot." And I looked down and there was a footprint, huge footprint. It was 16 inches long and 6 inches wide and like 4 inches deep. It was huge. And I put my boot in it. Whenever you're not expecting to step down into something and not expecting it to be as deep as it is, it kind of jolts your hip and your knee because you're stepping down farther than what you expected to. And I did that in that footstep. And then I looked down in it and you can see the toes and everything inside that footprint. It scared me so bad. I saw that one and it was kind of like he was talking to me through telepathy, if that makes sense. I knew whenever I saw that Bigfoot on Gobey that he was not going to hurt me. It was like he had a kind soul or something about him, a kind spirit or something about him. I knew that he wasn't going to hurt me. He was just curious. But the feeling that I got whenever we went up on the Cumberland Trail near Alley Ford was not that feeling at all. It was a different feeling. It was a scared feeling that come over me. And we felt like we were being watched the whole time we were there. And so I, of course, got out my phone and I videoed it. And there was structures around that was shaped like an A. And then there was this great big X made from trees right across on the other side of the trail. My husband was just dumbfounded at this point because he's a hunter. He's hunted his whole life. He knows prints of animals and he knows the sounds the animals make and everything. So he's aware of his surroundings in the woods. I grew up in the woods myself, but I'm not as familiar as he is with such things. And whenever he saw that print, he was dumbfounded as well. And at this point, I was ready to leave because I didn't want to run into one or this one, whatever it is that I felt on that mountain. I didn't want to run into it. Since that time, we have had so many encounters with Bigfoot. And I'm not sure if it's something that is because of the way I am, because I do have gifts, not a lot of people have. I have a gift of being able to communicate with things not in this realm, but in other realms. And I've helped police and stuff find people. And I don't know if that's the reason why I have so many interactions with them. But from that point on, I don't like to do any kind of whooping in the woods. I don't try to make any kind of sounds like that in the woods. We were going camping one time and we were scouting out an area to camp, and it was also on the Cumberland Trail and the Cumberland Plateau in Tennessee. We were hiking down through the woods and we were coming back from the camping area that we had chosen to stay at. And we were next to the creek, which is called Daddy's Creek. We kept feeling something staring at us. It felt like something was watching us. And my husband looked up through the woods and he said, do you see that? Do you see that in the woods? And I couldn't see it. So I gave him my phone to take a picture and video it. And he did. And it's this black figure. It looks like a person, or I'm not sure if it's a Bigfoot or what it is, but it's a figure standing behind a tree, and you can see its leg and its foot and everything and its head. And we hear things like whistling in the woods, and we hear whooping in the woods. And that same hiking trip where he took the picture, we were up on the overlook, and there was something pushing whole huge trees down below us, below the cliff that we were sitting on. It was huge, astronomical sized trees that this thing was pushing down. And it was throwing huge rocks into the creek water. We could hear it splashing, and you could see the ripples in the creek below us. I was kind of scared to go camping after that. So I went on to BFRO's site to see if anybody had reported seeing any Bigfoot down in that area. And there had been a couple of reports of people seeing Bigfoot in that area. Well, where we decided to camp, right across the creek, up on the hill, is a teepee-like structure. And it's a huge teepee-like structure, probably about 7.5 to 8 foot high. So that, on top of everybody going online reporting on BFRO that they've actually seen Sasquatch down in that area, made me very nervous about camping down there, but we did it anyway. We camped down there, and we heard a tree fall, but other than that, we didn't hear anything throughout the night. Since then, we have seen tree breaks, tree structures, different types of structures throughout the woods. Wherever we go, it seems that there are these things, but we do hike the Cumberland Plateau a lot, and Big South Fork in Tennessee, and Big South Fork in Kentucky. And we have also we've heard tree knocks and rock knocks in Big South Fork, and in Kentucky at Lick Creek. There, we heard rock knocks and whistling sounds at us then. And there's a lot of caves that we hike around, and we go near in Big South Fork and Cumberland Plateau. Recently, we did go to Big South Fork in March the 25th. We went over to Indian Rock House in Big South Fork. And we were just hiking for the weekend. We were there for our anniversary. And Friday, the 25th, we went down to Indian Rock House because it was short and quick. And we had the whole weekend, but we wanted to start off hiking that evening that we got up there. And so we go down there, and we're checking everything out, and it's starting to get a little dusky dark outside, and there's no sound anywhere. It's just the wind starts to pick up and starts to blow. Then I start to hear, it sounds like someone crying in the woods. I was like, Randy, do you hear that? It sounds like someone's crying in the woods. And he said, yeah, I hear that. I thought, maybe it is a Bigfoot. Maybe there is one here. Randy really wants to see a Bigfoot. I don't, but he really wants to see a Bigfoot. Since he didn't get to see the one, he really does. I did the whoop. And this is the first time that I've done it since that day that I saw the one on Gobey. As soon as I started doing that, we started hearing things coming back at us. It sounded like a screaming, a crying scream almost, but it was getting louder. And then it was making weird sounds. It sounded like something trying to communicate but wasn't able to speak English. So we started back up out of the area down at the Rock House, which is about, I guess, 150 to 200 feet walk up back out of the canyon area down in the dip. And so we're coming back up, and all of a sudden this huge rock got thrown at us. And I turned around and I looked at Randy, and I'm wearing my GoPro. All this time I'm getting on video, and I turn around and I look at Randy, and you can see the look of sheer terror on his face because I guess he's seen all these things, but as far as physical evidence landing right next to his feet almost, he's never had that before. So I walk over, there's an overlook where you can walk over not far from where it threw the first rock. And I go over there and I'm starting to communicate with it. And I'm saying, I hear you, I know you're there. And all of our electronics start going off. It was an Amber Alert. And then we started getting kind of weird reactions on our phones and stuff. It was kind of like our electronics were kind of going haywire. Then I hear something in my ear again, and it sounds like someone screaming. But on the video, something comes up to me and it says, yeah, just whispers, yeah, right in my ear. But Randy could hear it also. Well, I turned around and I started looking out where I thought I felt this Bigfoot was at, because whenever they are out and near, I can feel their presence. I can feel their being. It's really strange how you can feel it, even though you can't see them. But I was standing there and I told it to throw another rock, and it did. It threw another one. And I was trying to get it to come out, and I never could get it to come out. But we saw tree breaks and structures there as well. We've seen a lot of things that look, there's no way that they could have been made by just a regular animal. I saw this one structure that was 4 trees, and they were about 20 feet tall, and they were broke at that point about 20 feet up. That's about how high it was to the break off point. The whole tree was about 40 feet, but it was broke off about halfway up, and they were leaned over, making like a walk-through area, like a doorway or something. I don't know if it's like a portal for these things or what, because the Bible does talk about giants, and it does talk about Nephilim. I have a friend, his name is Matt Sieber, and he has been on Finding Bigfoot, and he's been on, a lot of these other shows concerning Bigfoot. He is the founder and the president of East Tennessee Bigfoot. And I am a member of that as well now, because he has seen, all the things that we have seen and videoed and recorded and such. So we've become a member of the East Tennessee Bigfoot. But me and my husband, we don't normally go out to seek out Bigfoot. It's just like they seek us out. Anytime I am in the woods, anytime, anywhere, they show up. I don't have to do much, but if I do make any kind of sounds or try to communicate with them, they show up. I just would like to get one on video, actual clear footage of this, so that we could help, to provide evidence that these things are real. And I don't know if they are supernatural or if they are actual beings. I don't know if they teleport. I don't know what they do, but it's just very strange to me that they can actually throw a huge rock and let it land right next to our feet and us not be able to see where it's at. But the one that I did see that day, he was as real as anything I've ever seen, any kind of animal that I've ever seen. And his eye shine, it was just, there was no white like ours. It was just completely black. His whole eye was just completely black. You could see the shine off of it from where it was daylight outside. And you could see the reflection in his eyes and the skin, how it wrinkled up around his eyes and the bridge of his nose. You couldn't see like his cheekbones and stuff because it was covered in fur, but he was huge. He was very big. He had to have been all of at least 8 to 8.5 foot. I want to go back there and find that tree if they haven't logged it and get my husband to stand there just to get a size reference of how big he was. Now, I also had another instance back last summer where I was at Hazard Cave, which is not far. Actually, it's across the road from the Indian Rock House in Big South Fork. We were going up to this other hill that's near this cave, and it kind of looks like the face of a skull in the actual bank itself. And I was standing there and I heard something come up behind me. I thought it was my husband. Something come up behind me and was saying something while I was recording, because I was recording video of showing the holes in the bank. And something came up behind me and was saying something and pushed me. And you can actually see it pushed me on the video. And I got startled. I thought it was turned around, and I was like, you scared me. And my husband was like 10 feet away from me. And he said, what do you mean I scared you? It dawned on me that it wasn't him that did that. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the Bigfoot, if they've actually got a way of cloaking themselves, or what, if they are the Nephilim from the Bible, are they partially spiritual beings? I don't know, but it's just amazing to me that they can come and go without being seen. I only believe they really get to be seen when they want to be seen. I don't want to see another one. I honestly don't want to see another one. My husband would like to, but I really don't want to see another one. I used to go in the woods all the time as a teenager, because I grew up in the woods, and I would hike at night with no flashlight or anything. I would go by the moonlight, and I felt like things were watching me then, but I always thought it was animals and stuff. But now at this time in my life, no, there would be no way in the world that I would go in the woods, especially after that, with no flashlight or anything. It's hard enough to get me in the woods at night now to camp. I love camping, but after that, it's questionable about whether or not how far I'll go out to camp. I've got to be close enough to be able to at least run out and get in my car if possible, within a mile at least. So that is my Bigfoot sighting.
Our Bigfoot sighting happened in 2012 in the summer. We're on the Ozarks of Missouri. So a little bit of a backstory to this is my dad had an apartment kind of near the woods, but it was still near a highway. It was still secluded, but everything was still pretty close. So how it started out was behind his apartments, there was a patch of woods. But in between those patch of woods, between the apartment and the patch of woods, there was probably like 30 feet. But in between those 30 feet, there was like this little island of like grass, and there's a really big tree. Whenever I would take our boxer out at night, like the more I would get closer to the woods, I would start hear like low growling and things like that. The closer that I got, like, the louder it would get. And like every night it kind of progressed, because I guess they kind of started getting familiar. We went in the woods a couple times before that briefly. And then that's whenever the growling kind of started. They started getting closer. And sometimes they would come up to that little island in between the house and like the big set of woods. There's an island about like 15 feet off of the building. One night I was taking them out, and then I guess they moved up to that clearing because I heard really big growls. It wasn't like a dog. It wasn't like a bear or anything like that, because I've heard those before. It really freaked me out, because our boxer was scared and he wasn't scared of much, tail in between his legs, and it frightened me. I was 11 at the time. So yeah, I started only taking them out during the day. And I took him out. It was probably about 3 p.m. or so. So it was pretty clear out. Sunny day, a little bit windy. And so I took our boxer out, like normal. No big deal. I started hearing really loud growling from the island of grass. But I couldn't see anything. And it started getting really deeper and really loud. It frightened me. But I didn't think anything too crazy of it. Then there was this big tree. It was probably at least foot around. And the top of its branches started moving and swaying really, really hard, like up and down. Like something was shaking it really hard. And that frightened me because then it started growling really, really loud. And so I got scared and I went back in the house and I grabbed my dad. We didn't hear anything after that night. So we would sleep with our window open and our bedroom was closest to the clearing. If you looked out our back window, you could see the clearing. So every night, whenever our window was open, there would be growls. And my dad was deep asleep, so he probably doesn't remember this. They were like really loud and they were scaring me because it was like nothing I've ever heard before. You know, like I was raised around the woods and stuff. I was like, what is this? It just kept getting closer and closer and closer until it sounded like it was about like 20 feet outside the window. And it scared me. I was shaking my dad. I was like, oh my gosh. And I started hearing like little thumps outside the window, like thump, thump. So I think they were throwing like pebbles or something was going on, but it was freaking me out. You know, as an 11-year-old kid, that's terrifying. Having something you've never heard before growl and like slowly get closer. And it would do this night after night. And it really started scaring me, you know, because you don't know what that is. And, you know, you shouldn't be afraid to go outside of your own apartment at night. That's just ridiculous. So one night, how our encounter started was we were just throwing ball and there was this huge clearing. It was kind of like a big U on the side of the apartments that went back pretty far, probably about the length of 2/3 of a football field. We were just playing catch and Dad wanted to go for a hike. So we did, and we started going down this hill. There was a lot of valleys and hills, and it was pretty thick forested. We started noticing like these weird formations. It looked like there was like a bunch of junk behind the apartment that was back in the woods near a crashed vehicle that was abandoned a long time ago. You could kind of see it before like going into the woods, so like you could see it from the clearing. The stuff would just be scattered, and it's not a place, you know, where other people would really go. Definitely like not any hobos or anything. So, but we just thought, you know, it was kind of weird, but we started noticing like teepee type structures and they were all bent over, and these were like big limbs, like probably 4 or 5 inches thick, you know, bent over as like the main support. And there was a bunch of branches around it. And we didn't think too much of it. You know, the first time that we saw it, we just thought, you know, maybe somebody was just goofing off in the woods and wanting to make something. But we kept noticing them, and like no human could bend those over like that. And we started noticing there was like 8 of them in the area of probably like a 50-foot span. We just kept walking through and we just kept finding more and more of them. So we were like, okay, you know, this is kind of weird, but at the time we didn't really think anything too crazy of it. But it also scared me because they were pretty close to the edge of the clearing, you know, before you get to the apartments, where I'd always hear like the growling. But that day we decided to go hiking. So we were making our way down this huge hill. We found like this concrete cave at the bottom of the hill. I was going to go in it, but my dad was like, no, let me go in it. So he goes in there, and it's probably about like 8 feet tall, you know, probably about like 8 feet wide too. And it went back about 25 feet, something like that. Yeah. It just went to a dead end, but I stayed outside of the cave because my dad didn't want me to get hurt. So I was just looking around, and all of a sudden I heard this growling. So I looked to my right, and there's this thick cedar tree, and I see this huge burly figure kind of like peek its head out, and like I could see like part of its shoulder, you know. I was like, what the heck is that? I've never seen anything like that. You know, it was like big and burly, but like once I, you know, laid eyes on it, I was scared. I was like, Dad, you know, and my dad comes running out of there. The thing was huge. It was just staring at me. I could tell it didn't really have obviously violent intent. You know, it was more of like a, what are you doing in my house type thing.
He just really ticked off and mad.
Yeah, he was mad. He was throwing pebbles at our feet through the thick cedar brush. My dad saw him peek out again. His shoulders were so broad. Mm-hmm. His hair was long. He was pretty poofy.
Yeah, very hairy.
Yeah. I've never seen anything like it. And the eyes weren't like glowing red, but they had like a hint. I don't know if it was reflection or what, but it was
kind of like an orangish black. I mean, it was like black in some areas. It was like an orange a little bit.
It was more like dim, you know, it wasn't like bright red. Yeah.
It wasn't like headlights or anything.
And so it started growling. And it started like slowly like sitting, because it was hunched over behind the cedar tree.
It's like in that Hulk Hogan muscle man bodybuilder flex, like raging at us.
Yeah, it looked like a gorilla, you know, whenever he's on all fours, but he's getting ready to get up. He started getting up because he was mad that we were by the cave, but I don't think he really wanted to hurt us. I think he was just trying to intimidate us. That freaked me out. And my dad was just like, run.
I said, don't run. Don't run. Head back to the house and walk very quickly.
Yeah, so we started walking towards the hill. But once I hit that hill, I start running up that hill like crazy. And we didn't look back or anything. I don't think he pursued us, but apparently there was some house in the woods.
That was when we went back.
No, that was that day.
Oh, was it that day?
That was that day, yeah. Because we were running up the woods, and we got to the clearing. We're exhausted at this point. You know, we just scaled a huge. Yeah, we were exhausted, and all of a sudden we hear some dude from the house that was deep in the woods. There was two guys. One guy came out and he was like, "What the heck is that?" He shouted it so loud, and the dude was like, "I don't know.
What is that?"
Yeah, and so
what is that thing? What the heck?
And so we ran back to the apartment. We stayed inside for the rest of the day. We were like, it's not worth it. And because nighttime was coming up, and I knew that's whenever they like to get real close, and they felt more comfortable. So yeah, we stayed inside all night. There was always a bunch of deer, probably like 12 to 15 deer whenever we would pull in, and we would see them every night. Obviously it's the middle of summer, so deer season isn't in. We saw these deer probably every night for a month and a half. So then one night we pull in like usual and we see the deer, but there's like 6 of them, half the usual amount. We were like, well, that's not right. You know, nothing in those woods could eat that many deer at once. And we thought maybe it was weird, you know, maybe the other ones were somewhere else.
And it wasn't the rut yet either.
No.
They started disappearing before the rut.
Yeah, so it wasn't, you know, normal movement times either. We kept coming back, doing our thing, normal routine. Nothing too crazy was happening. But every night, there would be fewer and fewer deer. And these deer would show up every night. So it came to like 6, and then it was like 4, and then there was like 1.
Then it went to 0.
Yeah. One night, we decided to go into the woods. That's whenever all the funny business started happening, because we started down the path that we took towards the initial encounter. We started hearing knocks. It sounded probably about 100 feet away.
Didn't we have the deer rifle with us that time?
Yeah. I think I had a machete or something.
Yeah.
But I know I had something because I wasn't going in there without it.
Even a deer rifle, I don't know if that would drop a Sasquatch. I don't really know.
So it was about 100 feet away. And we didn't think anything too crazy of it, but it was about 3 knocks. We heard one down to the valley to the left of us, and it was probably 200, 300 feet away. And we were like, that's not normal. You know, that's
kind of formed into a triangle because we had the third one that we heard too off to the south.
Yeah. The ones to the south started doing knockings too. They started slowly coming in from each side. They were trying to flush us out, I guess, of the woods because they did not want us in there, especially after what happened with the cave. We stayed and we kept going. We went a little deeper into the woods, and like the knocks around us just kept getting closer and closer. Each side of the triangle, because they did form a triangle around us, you know, they were closing in. Every couple minutes, there'd be another knock. One of them would be closer.
They kept getting closer.
And another one would be closer until we were hearing knocks all around us that sounded like 30 feet away.
And we didn't go into the woods to try to kill the Sasquatches or anything. No. We were in awe by them because we'd never seen such a thing. We had open mind. And at that time, that Matt Moneymaker show was on, searching for Sasquatch or whatever. And we always had an open mind towards some of the monsters and things. But we didn't really know that they existed. And it just kind of blew our mind that we actually started to encounter something, because Ashton and I had hiked and hunted. He would always go with me to deer hunt and things. From the time he was a little guy, he would do the deer call and things, and then I would shoot. But that was a sound and a sight that we had never seen. And like he said, that Sasquatch, I had just never seen something like he said. It was just like beyond the strongest wrestler that you'd ever seen, like in your life. Like, I'm obviously a lot older as his dad, in my 40s now, and grew up watching Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. And this thing just like would have just took Andre the Giant and just like took him over his knee and broke him.
Yeah, he could rip him in half.
Yeah. And the thing had like a cone kind of head. It wasn't like a coconut. It wasn't like a circle. It was like a cone.
A slight cone.
Like a silverback has.
Yeah.
Silverback gorilla.
Exactly like that.
But it had like a human-looking nose, but like a smashed nose is what it looked like to me.
Pretty much like a gorilla.
Yeah. But it didn't like sink in like a gorilla. It had more like a human nose, but it
extended out.
Yeah.
It extended out.
Yeah, it came out. And its head was way bigger than ours. And I didn't really notice a neck, though. It seemed like the head was kind of like sitting on the shoulders, like the most muscly football lineman that you've ever seen in your life.
Right.
And that thing, it's hard not to overestimate a height, because you feel so small, like next to something like that, because it was like about 30 yards off, if that. I could tell when it was hunching, it was still like a foot taller than me, at least. And I'm 6'1". My guess would be, at the minimum, it was like 7'5", and more realistically, it was probably in the 8 foot something category. But the thing had just arms that were just absolutely like basketball biceps or bigger. That might have been because of the hair, but the thing was like a dark brownish black, like a really dark brown or a black. I couldn't tell because it was in the shade, a little bit of shade under that cedar.
I think it seemed like a really, really dark brown.
I've had several people that I have actually talked to. We don't talk to too many people because a lot of people aren't open-minded, and those are usually the people that never set foot in the woods in their life. I'm not saying like all monsters that we grew up seeing on the movies are real, but there's definitely more out there that we don't know. And I mean, National Geographic doesn't have a storyline on every single animal that's alive like a lot of people think. It was mad, and I would venture to say it probably had more like gorilla teeth. It didn't have like, some people ask if it had like pointed like canines like tigers. It didn't have like 3-inch canines, but you could tell they were like more exaggerated than a human's. But I just saw him for a split second when he was quivering his lips, like growling, and he had just like flat chiclet teeth in the front, and then it looked like on the corners there were exaggerated human ones, kind of like, or gorilla, like on the corner canines.
It looked like almost like a rubbery face, like a gorilla does.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was a dirty face or if its actual skin was a brownish black, but it had less hair, it looked like, on the face. I don't know if it was dirty or not, but I know we backed out of there. I told you not to run it first because I was afraid that thing was going to chase us, being a predator. And I do remember the woods got really quiet when we had our encounter back there.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, you always know that that's an apex predator in the woods and stuff.
Yeah, I remember whenever they had us in like the triangle formation and they were trying to flush us out, and we were slowly going back up the hill. And then they started throwing like pebbles at us.
Yes.
Like one hit your back and you were like, why are you throwing that at me? And I was like, I didn't do that. And you were like, don't play with me. And I was like, I'm not.
It was just very, very weird because Ashton and I, the animals we have around us here in Missouri, the Ozarks and things, they have a few mountain lions. I haven't ever seen one in person. I know one was in an area where we lived out in the country before, but I never had seen it personally. One of our dogs got cut up by one of our foxhounds. Just now they're releasing bears, black bears, there's no way that was a bear, and there's no way that was a person in a gorilla suit, because the arms were way too long and the stature was way too tall and way too wide. The arms are way longer than like even a basketball player's arms. It seemed like exaggerated arms for some reason, but
it was like double a linebacker, you know, like it was,
it seemed crazy. It reminded me mostly of ape, but eerily human.
Right.
We weren't wanting to kill one or anything. We just were like so amazed by it. It didn't look exactly like Chewbacca on Star Wars, but it was kind of similar. Like Chewbacca's really tall, that character on Star Wars. Like
it reminded me of like a football player, but like with gorilla arms. He was huge.
We started researching it a lot after we had our encounter to try to learn more about it and hear about other people's encounters, because we couldn't just like talk to like anybody about it. We found that out real quick. But we started researching it, and a lot of people say there's a smell or something, but I never personally smelled the thing. But like I said, I don't have like the best sense of smell sometimes, and the thing wasn't touching us. It wasn't like some people say, well, I don't know, it was off in the distance. Maybe you're just seeing stuff. This was the thing that you could see the hair on it. You could tell, just like when you go to the zoo, if you see, you know, some kind of animal with a bunch of fur, like a lion's mane or something, you see that fur or hair all sticking up, whatever.
And like with the growling outside the window thing, I think it was more of they were trying to mark their territory type thing. Like, I don't want to hurt you, but like stay away, instead of, you know, more like aggressive. Because I think they were about just as curious as we are, you know.
Yeah.
Because they're intelligent, obviously.
Yes, very. You could definitely tell there was an intelligence about the thing. And that alone would give me, of course, I would shoot at something like if I thought it was going to kill one of us or something like that. But I mean, if I had a gun. But that intelligence level, I would never shoot if the thing wasn't going to do anything, because I think just interacting with them, if they could be peaceable, it would be very cool. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking about after our encounter, son, they were doing that 4-lane construction not too far from our apartment and cutting into the woods and running that jackhammer all the time. And I was wondering, after hearing some different accounts about how they don't like the sounds of loud noises and things, and their land obviously getting torn up and stuff for asphalt and things. I didn't know if maybe that was part of the reason why they were really angry at us too. I don't know.
They definitely did not like her dog.
Right. I started taking him out at night and not letting you take him out.
Oh, that's scary. That terrified me.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's scary for a grown man.
Because like the tree that was in the island between the apartments and the woods, it was probably like a clearing of just like really tall bushes, and it was like mainly like one big tree and like a bunch of little ones around it. And to see the top of that tree moving like that.
That was a big tree. That was really
terrified me, because, you know.
That was a big white oak.
One, you know, like the wind wasn't blowing that way because it was going up and down. It wasn't going, you know, like with the wind. And what really terrified me about it was in the middle of the day. Most of the time, you know, they always try to mess with us at night, but I never thought
there's always kooky stuff going on back there. And I feel bad. I remember when we first started having some of those things, not trying to backtrack too much, but I feel bad because I didn't believe my son right away. I thought his imagination, like I said, was getting the best of him sometimes, because we were watching that Bigfoot thing on TV, and he was telling me these things, and I was kind of going along with it to make our hikes a little more interesting, maybe a little spooky or whatever. But then I started seeing this stuff, and I remember in the fall too, remember those huge, it wasn't detailed footprints because the leaves had fallen, but it was smashed down. Oval.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about those.
My 11 boot was swallowed by the footprint.
Yeah. We can normally only get about like 3 toes out of it, though.
Yeah, we didn't. It's not like some of those things that they show on TV where it looks like exactly like a human foot, because this was like leaves down.
It's not exactly one that you could, you know, like get a cast.
Yeah, we couldn't cast that.
But you could definitely tell that there was like a lot of weight on the big toe, weight on the big toe, because it was muddy. You know, it was raining a decent amount. It sunk in way more. You know, like a human's big toe would whenever we stepped. There was a lot of pressure going there. nothing else in the woods really has a footprint quite like that, especially that size.
Yes, that definitely. Our black bears are not that big here in Missouri. I mean, we're talking like maybe 200 pounds be a big black bear. I mean, I'm not a professional hunter. We do it out of sport, and we enjoy spending time in the woods. But I mean, that's not a track that I have ever seen in my life. And a black bear track is way smaller than that, and it wouldn't have swallowed my size 11 boot. And if you remember, the thing that really astounded me was when we weren't in the mud and it was just leaves, when you and I would walk, our tracks would only sink into the leaves about a quarter inch, and it seemed like theirs sunk about 2 inches. I'm talking just leaves. In the mud, it was deeper. That's what astounded me. And that's when I really was like, I knew there was something huge back there.
We kept finding like the teepees, all throughout the woods, and they were huge trees. No anywhere close to ordinary person would ever be able to bend anything like that. Because
at first I think I said, a bunch of kids probably did that. Mm-hmm. And then we started thinking about how big around those trees were. Because remember, I tried to bend one down. I couldn't even get one to flex.
And the thing is like for you to be able to get trees like
and
that,
I'm 200 pounds.
You're going to have to be very tall, like reaching up with like your arm.
Yes.
Like there's no way that you're going to reach the middle of the tree and be able to bend that over. There's no way, especially to be able to hold it while you're putting other trees on top. So like, obviously it doesn't fly up. You could tell there was like sunken in, like a person was sleeping there.
Remember, I reached my hand up. I can touch a little bit over 8 foot. So I'm 6'1" when I stretch. And that was a good, I would say 2.5, 3 foot taller than me. I'm just guessing what it had to grab.
You couldn't even make it budge.
No, I couldn't do anything. It's definitely interesting. I know that we did go back to try to see them again, and we never had like an encounter as far as like seeing them. But like my son said earlier, we would hear them and we'd hear the wood knocks and all of that. And I feel the worst as a dad because he was only 11 at the time, is not really believing him 100% when he first told me that. And he had never really told any kind of lie.
Well, one would think, like you're just thinking things, or maybe you heard a weird noise.
And I thought there's too much coincidence because we were watching that Bigfoot show a little bit. We just started watching that just a little bit. And then all of a sudden we didn't know much about Sasquatch or Bigfoot really. Besides, we heard about like the stories about Booger Man or boogers, or, used to hear those stories, like at least I did, from family and stuff, how you got to go to sleep before midnight or the boogers come out and boogeyman.
So like we looked up on the map, I can't remember what it was, but it showed like a map and it had like dots of like sightings all over the country. And we zoomed in on the Ozarks. There was a lot of them in the close area where we were.
I remember I talked to BFRO briefly through email. They had said, I'm wanting to say, he said there were 3 sightings within so many miles of where we were.
It was a bunch of hills.
Yes.
So they
call them Ozark Mountains, but they're not really mountains. If you look at the Appalachian, are definitely not Rocky Mountains, but they're hills. They're basically hills.
But yeah, they were very steep hills and stuff. So plus, even if somebody was sleeping back there, it's off the highway. There's like barricades all up around the Ozarks, off the highway. So it's not like anybody's going down there to party or anything like that, because they're just way too secluded. Like there are so many woods in the Ozarks, it's not even funny. There are so many wooded areas. Like if you drive to the area, it's just woods. That's all you're going to see.
You and I were used to hiking. I was in a lot better shape back then, and we used to hike a lot. And that area, for somebody that just would be running back there to play a prank, there's way too much hiking and up and down on those hills, and hard to navigate terrain and stuff for them to do that. That's way too much effort. I'm way too lazy to try to do something silly like that.
Plus, like even if you did play a prank, there's not really anybody back there.
No. And the thing, like the measurements of that thing did not add up at all to a human. I've never seen a human that big.
No, absolutely not.
To even fill out that suit, yeah.
No, not even The Rock.
No, he made The Rock just look like Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
Pretty much. That thing was just like absolutely huge. But I can tell you for sure, we still go into the woods and go hiking and things, but I don't know about you, son, but I know that's always on my mind to keep an eye open for a Bigfoot or something. And I know I'll probably never have another encounter again, but that's on my mind every single time I go into the woods. And I always make sure I'm armed now. And I know you do too. I don't feel comfortable going into the woods. And it's not so much to like try to kill one and just be to scare one off, just shooting it into the ground or something. Right. Try to startle it to leave you alone.
If I ever did encounter one again, which, is highly unlikely, but if I did, I wouldn't try to kill it, just like you. Yeah, I'd definitely kill it if I had to, but now I feel a lot more safe because I got a lot more guns now, so I'd probably take a 12 gauge and a 9. But even then, compared to something that big, because if that thing wanted to kill us, it could have easily done it.
You'd about need a elephant gun, I would think, to 4.58 or 50 cal to try to drop something like that.
45-70, something in that caliber range.
Yeah.
To feel confident.
My personal feelings, I'm not an expert on anything, but my feelings is that just like other animals, I work with a lot of domesticated animals and stuff and train them and things. They all have their own temperaments, just like us as humans do, I think. And I think Sasquatch are the same. You hear some of those violent encounters and things like that. I'm sure there's very violent ones out there and there's very friendly ones out there, just like humans. That's my opinion. But like I said, I'm not an expert in anything on that. But it definitely changed our lives. As far as the way you look at things. Before we just had an open mind. Now there's no question in our mind that they exist.
Right. But I feel very thankful for that encounter. And yes, it was pretty scary, but at the same time, it kind of opens up your mind and it kind of shows you like we aren't always at the top of the food chain.
Yes. Because I know in the past, I was raised on a horse farm and things, and we had a cougar in the area. And I remember going out there. So when my son was a little baby, I went out there. I thought I heard it. It screamed like a woman screaming, and I was trying to track that in the woods. That's the only time the hair on my neck stood up in the woods when I got out there and it made another noise, and I think it was in the trees. But I had never had my kneecaps actually shake like they did like with that Sasquatch. When we got back home, you were only 11, so you couldn't drink a beer. But that was the first thing I did. I had to sit down and drink a beer to calm my nerves because my kneecaps kept jumping and my fingers were shaking all over the place.
Yeah, I think the initial encounter and whenever we went back and they were doing a triangle formation on us, I think that was the only time I've actually felt unsafe.
And like put in your place on the food chain. That was the only way I can really kind of describe that. It's like, even like with a bear, I think, you at least have a chance if you got a weapon on you and things. But man, with that thing, as fast as those things are and as big as they are, it is just insane.
And their camouflage is immaculate. It's insane.
Yeah, because it just kind of, until you can focus, if you just see it out of the corner of your eye, it just looks like a blob. And there were times when we were in the woods hiking before we had that big encounter, I kind of swore I saw something out of the corner of my eye, but I thought I was just kind of like seeing things. Like I didn't know if it was just something I was picking up out of the corner of my eye that was just natural or whatever. But I don't know. Thinking back about that, thing as fast as they can move.
Yeah, because I think the thing is like, you're not going to see it 90% of the time unless it wants you to see it.
Yeah. And he definitely wanted us to see it that time, I feel, because he's like, get off my property.
Right. Because he could have easily seen us through the cedar branches.
Well, I'm sure he saw us coming a mile away pretty much, because we were just talking in the woods and walking.
There's a bunch of leaves on the ground too. So
and we weren't trying to be quiet. Right. Trying to hunt or anything. We were just hiking. Was all we were doing. I wanted to show you that concrete cave that I ran into before, because I had seen that back there when you were at your mom's, and I wanted to show that to you. I definitely didn't see it on my own. I think that was one of the reasons I was so scared, is I had no weapons and I was afraid that thing might run up and like snatch you or something, because you were only 11 and not having a weapon. I got a pocket knife, and that's basically just like a plastic spoon on a Bigfoot, probably.
Yeah.
But that's about all of our encounter that I remember.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. We kind of just went over all the main details and all. It's interesting to see like all their little quirks, the pebble throwing.
Mm-hmm. When you look back on it, there were so many things that like we didn't know to look for, but we put it all together after we saw the thing. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I was thankful to have it, and also gives you more respect for the woods.
Yes,
in my opinion.
I agree too. Totally agree 100%, because I didn't have really a fear of the woods whatsoever, or a proper fear, I guess. I don't know. But I felt like I was definitely put in my place after I saw that thing and heard them, and just knew that there was like, they're so much superior to us as far as any kind of thing to do. They own the woods, basically.
They really do.
And
like an apex predator.
Oh yeah, apex all the way. I mean, I could see that thing just like fighting a grizzly bear and killing it.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
That's about it.
Encounter. Yeah.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the 5-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah, the sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. His pickup man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, booking hay bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm, fried chicken, porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sound.